Good afternoon and welcome to the Hawkeye Parents and Families webinar series. My name is Mira Anson and I work here in the Academic Support and Retention Office and will be the moderator for today's webinar. If you are unfamiliar with our webinars, they are hosted on the first Friday of each month from noon to 1 p.m. We hope that each one provides you with up-to-date information that may apply to your student's transition to the University of Iowa. We know that parent and family members play a vital role in student success, and we hope that these webinars provide a platform for us to provide you with resources that will help you support your student in their success. If you can't attend every live webinar, we do record and post them later. For more information, future topics, or to sign up for webinars, please visit parents.uiowa.edu and click on the Resources tab. Each webinar has a short presentation and then a question and answer portion where you can get your questions answered by our campus experts. Today's webinar is Managing Homesickness, Strategies for Success. We are very lucky and fortunate to have one of our wonderful staff psychologists from University Counseling Services, Dr. Maria Bruno. Maria is a doctor of psychology and licensed mental health counselor and a former staff sergeant from the National Guard and United States Air Force. She has extensive experience in working with adolescents and young adults. We are very lucky to have Maria here with us today to talk about how to develop strategies on how to best support your students in their transition to college and to manage homesickness. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you, Mira. I'm happy to be here. Okay, so today's learning objectives include understanding the etiology and concept of homesickness. We will also understand the effects that homesickness can have on student success. And number 3, we will learn ways to help empower and support a student who is experiencing homesickness. So I know there's a lot on the screen, but basically I wanted to start off with helping us understand how the etiology of homesickness developed across time. And I'm a really big fan of storytelling, so hopefully I'll be able to share a little bit of a story for you all to help you understand how this is not something that is only for college students, but it actually has been a part of our history since the beginning of time. So homesickness was originally called nostalgia, which meant longing for a lost home, and it was an original term that was utilized and discovered by, at the time, a student, Johannes Hofer, who was a student at the University of Basel in Switzerland in 1688. At that time, he was studying the topic of severe homesickness, and they considered it to be a medical disease. So the word was derived from Greek algos, meaning pain, grief, distress, and nostos, meaning homecoming. So the word was originally used specifically and only to reference individuals from Switzerland and was often considered to be fatal. And then in the 1830s, it was actually used to describe the experience of sailors, convicts, African slaves. If you're noticing a trend, it's individuals who tend to move away and they're longing for a lost home. So the historical progression of homesickness included or moved into the 1850s. So there is, I don't know how many of you actually are fans of TED Talks, but there is a historian by the name of Susan Matt, and she actually did a TED Talk specifically on homesickness. So if you would like to also access that after this webinar, that would be a really good thing for you all to do, because she talked about the gold miners in the 1850s where men were perceived to be progressive. They were considered to be revered as really strong individuals with a lot of courage because they were moving away from home and they were going to these new territories and lands. But there's a lot of documentation, archival data that includes their journals where they specifically talk about the levels of homesickness that they experienced. In the 19th century, the government actually crafted policies to deal with homesickness. So the Canadian Army banned bagpipe music because it actually made the Scottish recruits extremely lonely and sad that they wanted to leave. In the US, in our country here, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the song Home Sweet Home, but it was banned from being played in the Union Army camps during the American Civil War. The reason it was banned was because the government actually feared that the soldiers would reminisce too much about home and want to abandon the war, or that they would eventually develop physical symptoms. As I mentioned earlier, homesickness was referred to a medical disability with physiological symptoms. And so at that time, the doctors continued to diagnose individuals who were experiencing homesickness with nostalgia. And then now more recently, in the 20th century, with the development of large corporations, specifically IBM, and with the military growing, they recognized that individuals who struggled with homesickness were actually considered to be barriers for their missions. And so then we moved away from seeing homesickness as something that was actually pretty normal, and we encourage people to separate and discourage from signs of any emotional connection that they may have with their family of origin. So that is kind of difficult, I think, for us to kind of conceptualize as homesickness as something that is a pretty common experience for everyone, not just specifically for college students. I would encourage you just to take a moment for right now and think about how we see this across all of our lives. So think about perhaps the food that you eat, right? Comfort food, food that you are familiar with, food that is reminiscent of maybe parents home cooking or having a good connection with another individual. Think about the sports teams that we root for, right? So I live in Iowa, but I'm a big Cubs fan. So think of the connection, what that means. Think about the interactions that you have with others. I mean, especially nowadays with, a lot of our phone use, right? Facebook, tweeting, texting, calling, Skyping. We are all longing for connection, longing for what is familiar. So let's bring it to today. Now that you've had a little bit of history, and let's talk about the current definition of homesickness. So homesickness is the distress or impairment that is caused by an actual or anticipated separation from home. So there's some various signs and symptoms, which may include, for example, a student calling home more frequently than perhaps you had anticipated, or asking to come and visit as well. If a student is preoccupied with their thoughts of home and or attached objects. If they're expressing total dissatisfaction with everything and everyone on campus. They can also experience symptoms of depression. For some, it could manifest in excessive consumption of alcohol or food restriction. It can also manifest through excessive TV, internet, or video game use, which is usually avoidance, which then can lead to anxiety, which can also lead to withdrawn behavior. And homesickness is actually a lot more common than we realize. According to research, there are about 15 million freshmen each year. Out of those 15 million freshmen, 1,050,000 of them, 7%, actually have some level of homesickness. Homesickness is very broad, and it serves on a continuum from mild to severe. It can occur either immediately during the first few days before they actually come on campus, after a couple of weeks of being on campus. It can also occur around mid-semester, after holidays, and sometimes even as far as after the winter break. So what causes homesickness in terms of the college population? Well, the simple transition from home to the university. As we all know, any transition can be overwhelming and stressful for all of us. There can also be challenges that the student faces of independently now managing their lives. So as much as our students are excited about the new autonomy that they're going to have in regards to managing decisions for themselves, a lot of them fail to realize that they really did appreciate having parental support to help guide in some decision making. Another one could be adjustment can be complicated by cultural differences. And by cultural differences, I mean not just race and ethnicity, but even something as simple as coming from a rural setting into an urban setting or vice versa. In addition to the type and frequency of contact that the student might have had with primary care providers. These and other challenges can often instill self-doubt and force an uncomfortable recalibration of a student's academic or social self-concepts. So the impact that homesickness can have on your student's success can be many. One of them is simply adjusting to the demands of college, whether it's academically or socially. So for example, are they not able to maintain the kind of academic grades that they were hopeful for? Or are they really struggling to engage in the community and really take advantage of all the resources? Another one could be, are they struggling making friends and feeling like they fit in? A lot of the times when students come into our office reporting symptoms of homesickness and having difficulty making connections, it often because they are really stuck on missing the past relationships that they have, that it interferes with their ability to actually give anyone an opportunity to form a new relationship. Another thing can be struggling with staying on campus on the weekends, which then results in decreased opportunities to connect with other students here at the university. Procrastination, disorganization, and even for some, it could lead into perfectionism, so never thinking that their work is good enough. And then self-doubt about their capacity to succeed. Unfortunately, students who suffer with homesickness tend to have a higher probability of wanting to drop out from college. So the reason we are doing this is to also be able to help your student overcome homesickness. The reason I began the presentation with telling a little story about the history of the development of homesickness is to remind us that this is actually pretty normal. And so we would encourage you to normalize your students' feelings. Don't see it as a feeling of weakness, but as a recognition of the sense of belonging and loving that they had at home with you. So reframing it for them. The second thing is reframing it from a perspective of adjustment can be an opportunity for growth. So maybe we have an opportunity to make some changes in the way that we have interacted with our environment in the past that we can grow from and we can learn and we can transition those skills into our future personal and professional development. Number 3, bringing some pieces of home to their new environment is always very helpful. Not that I'm asking that they bring everything from their bedroom, but a couple of things. One of the things that is really simple for them to do is to take pictures of certain things that are meaningful to them, making a specific space in their bedroom that can really remind them of home, whether it's their half of the room or their bed or even their desk. And just encourage them to decorate it with mementos of home or pictures that they like. Number 4, seeking the familiar. So going back to longing for home, right? This could be done here. Maybe they can't bring home with them, but they can find things that remind them of home, such as maybe going to their favorite fast food restaurant that they did back at home. For some, it could be Chipotle. For some, it could be Pancheros. Reminding them to listen to, certain kind of music that they listen to, or watching TV shows. Those are things that they can bring with them. The other one would be, okay, so let's say they've done those things, so how can we create familiarity here in this new environment? So one of the things that helps us function as human beings is simply establishing routines and practices so that we become familiar with them. So this could be something as simple as perhaps joining a sport or some kind of cultural or spiritual organization. especially if they were doing some of these activities at home. They can start them back up in this new community. Encourage them to be open to try new activities, something as simple as a daily walk, exploring the campus, going to movies. Basically, we're trying to encourage them to develop new routines that will create familiarity for them. Number 6, building a support network. That is one of the biggest things that we always try to encourage students to do. So we always would like to hear that somebody's knocking on our dorm room and saying, hey, would you like to go out for lunch or coffee? So encouraging your student to maybe take that initiative and having them knock on someone's door and asking them out for coffee. A support network is good for emergencies and a sense of belonging. So anyone that they would have had a positive interaction, whether it was a small interaction during their initial days here on campus, would be someone that I would encourage you to encourage your student to reach out to. Number 7, I would also encourage them to look after their own physical and mental health. So simple, basic hygiene questions. Are they eating? Are they showering? Are they exercising? Are they finding places where they can decompress and relax? Reminding them that they are precious and that they can and will overcome this, and that you have all the faith in them, in their ability to do so. Number 8, encourage them to be open to making new friends and recognizing that just like every friendship, it may take a little bit of time. And when they go to a group activity, encouraging them to arrive early or maybe staying a little bit later so that they can have those opportunities to talk to people. And reminding them that a shared interest is the basis of a friendship, and if they are both present at these particular group activities or meetings, well, they already have a shared interest, which is the group itself. Number 9, I would encourage you to have your students schedule time to either Skype, text, or have some kind of contact with family and friends that they do miss. You as parents can surprise them with either care packages or even a simple letter through the mail, old school, letting them know that you know that they will be able to get through this and that you are proud of them. And then number 10, be aware that when making these kind of connections with your student, it is a fine line between helping or hindering their homesickness. So sometimes too much contact can interfere with their ability to adjust to the new environment, but I also do not discourage you from not having contact with them. Just making sure that we're setting appropriate boundaries to help them navigate their internal distress. And then number 11, encourage them to explore the campus and its surrounding environment. So here on campus, there's actually a lot of really cool artistic pieces throughout the campus that a lot of students are not aware of. So letting them know to explore the campus to see how many of those pieces they can find so they can become a little bit more familiar, and who knows, they might be surprised. They might find this special little quiet spot that they really like to go frequent. On their time off, they can act as tourists and take pictures and maybe share some of that with family members and friends from back home, and let them share their new experiences with individuals that are important to them. And lastly, if you've tried all of these great things and you still notice that your student is struggling, then this might be a time for you to encourage them to seek out services at UCS. So as Mira mentioned, I am a member of the University Counseling Services, and we provide students with an array of services which include consultations, group and individual counseling, case management. All of our services are free and confidential. They are part of a medical record. They are protected by HIPAA. Because you are a parent does not necessarily mean that if you call us and request to speak to us about your particular student that we would be able to disclose any information about your students. We do welcome your phone calls, but we also remind you that we can take information that you have about your students, but we can't necessarily disclose any information. So we have served over 2,000 students last year, and we saw students for a wide range of mental health concerns. Concerns being homesickness, adjustment difficulties, symptoms of depression, anxiety, eating disorders, performance anxiety, just a whole array of different concerns. Students who are just needing a place to problem solve, a student who has learned of, some sort of crisis going on at home, and they just need support. So we are here for them for basically whatever it is that they need in regards to their social emotional functioning. We have a pretty large staff. Our staff consists of doctoral level psychologists. We have added this year some new social workers that are also providing services to students. We have a lot of doctoral level trainees, and we also have 3 embedded therapists across campus, one being in the College of Dentistry, one in the athletic department, and our newest member is embedded in Stanley Residence Hall. We offer services in English, Mandarin, and Spanish. So I have provided a picture here for you. So the picture on the left is the brick building, and that is the West Lawn building, and that's what it looks like on the outside. And then on the right, I also included a picture of a map so that you can see that we are on the west side of the river. Usually students don't know where we're at. So if you tell your student, just go to Student Health and Wellness, they will find us. We are open Monday through Fridays, 8 to 5 p.m. And all they have to do is simply give a call and request to schedule a consultation. And this was our staff picture last year. We have a lot more staff this year, but I don't have a picture of us yet.
Thank you so much, Maria, for the great information about supporting students through homesickness. We will now move into the question and answer portion of our webinar. Please remember that we have lots of people attending this webinar today, and Maria is unable to answer questions about specifics on your student's experience. However, Maria can help us provide information that may be helpful in guiding your student. If you have a question, type it into the question box on the side. We will then read the question so all participants can hear, and then Maria will answer the question. If we are unable to get to your question during the webinar, we will follow up with you via email to answer the question. Okay, it looks like we have one. Ready? Our first one. Okay, we have, sorry if I can make it out here on the screen. Okay, our first question, can anyone visit with the embedded counselors? E.g., could someone at Courier visit with the counselor at Stanley Residence Hall?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. I am not totally sure. For right now, I'm going to recommend that they call UCS and ask that question. That is, it's our first time having an embedded therapist over at one of the, at Stanley Hall. So I would just encourage them to call and ask our central office and see what they would respond.
Thank you. All right, we have our next question. My son has a care provider at home. He can find a consistent care provider, or how can he find a consistent care provider in Iowa City? I think it'll benefit for him to see someone often and throughout his time at the University of Iowa.
So for this particular question, all your son would have to do is call UCS and request to meet with our case manager if that is exactly what he wants to do. So if he knows for a fact that he wants a referral to a local community provider that can provide him with open-ended treatment, which is a longer-term treatment, that's all he would need to do.
Thank you. These are great questions. All right, we have one more. My daughter wants to come home every weekend and doesn't like the partying atmosphere in town. How can I encourage her to stay and find activities that don't involve partying?
I get this question quite a bit from students who do not engage in the bar scene. And so one of the things that we often tell students is we have over 500 student organizations here at the university. And so what I do with them is I go online and I help them navigate through the different organizations and see which ones they might be interested in joining, and then encourage them to join. So basically what they're doing is trying to find community of shared interest.
That's great. Okay, well, what we'll go ahead and do is wrap up, and if anybody does have additional questions, certainly you can reach out to us. Thank you again to Maria Bruno for joining us today. All webinars will be posted online at uc.uiowa.edu/family-resources. If we were unable to get to your question, or if you might have an additional question, we will follow up with you via email to answer any sort of questions or concerns you may have. Please send additional questions to the email address uc-retention@uiowa.edu, and a response from our University of Iowa staff member will come your way as soon as possible. Again, thank you very much for joining us today. And please remember to join us for next month's webinar, Paying for Next Year, the New Financial Aid Process. This webinar will be held on Friday, October 7th from noon to 1 p.m. Hosted by the Office of Academic Support and Retention and the Office of Student Financial Aid. We'll be going over important dates in the new FAFSA process. Thank you so much again for joining us today, and on Iowa, go Hawks!